Everyone, I'm just going to read my disclaimer before we get started here. I'm not a licensed realtor, lawyer, accountant, mortgage broker, or financial advisor. This coaching program is intended to be educational only, and everything that I teach comes from decades of personal experience, not hearsay or something I've learned from somebody else. I openly and honestly disclose what I found works and what doesn't, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls regarding mortgages, debt, and real estate investing that I've learned over the years and that I find are financially destroying a lot of people who don't know about them. By being here, you agree that I'm not advising you, but only educating you. And you also agree that I own the intellectual rights to the materials that I provide, both in video and print, and therefore you agree not to share or publish these materials without my written consent. You also know I'll be recording these meetings and you'll be provided a link to the recording. Okay, we'll start in a few seconds. All right. Look at all the smiling faces.
Hey, Candy.
Hi.
I have limited data right now, so if my video starts to glitch out or I can't hear, I'll log back in on my husband's phone. His name is Mark Picard.
Okay, good to know. Thanks for letting me know. Awesome. Yeah, if I don't recognize the name on there, sometimes I won't let you in unless I figure out who you are. But that's good. Actually, I see, nope, that's someone else, another name. That's all right. Okay, how's everybody doing?
Perfect. Excellent.
Awesome.
Perfect.
If any of you want to turn your video, that have your videos off, that would be awesome if you can. I always find it's more, unless you're having dinner, I do respect that. But I do, I always just find it's like protocol that you should be on video if you're attending a class, right? It's like going to a class and then going to sleep on the desk or something. That's what it just reminds me of. I don't know. It just seems to me to be the thing to do. But
that's a great idea. I'm going to go sleep on the deck.
No, Nelda, now we know you're going to do that. You can't get away with it. Hilarious. All right. And I'm glad, Nelda, we got that date straightened out. I'm like, what is she talking about? That's
thanks. No, I've got too many things on my calendar. I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I knew it wasn't because we have the debt reduction on Thursday night this week too. So I thought, what is she talking about? I'm sure I wouldn't have double booked it. So I double checked. So that worked out really good. I'm glad.
Me too.
Okay, good. Awesome. And I do have Eric, is he on? I can't see everybody at once. Let's see here. I sent Eric a, oh, there you are, Eric. Yep. I have to scan back for. I sent you an email about tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific if you're available.
Certainly, thanks.
Does that work? Okay, we'll just meet here on this Zoom
Okay,
and we'll do that. Okay, so I've got
very
that.
good, thanks.
Yeah. I was going to go over stuff tonight, but then I thought, no, you and I should discuss I always like to meet with everybody in advance first before we do it in front of everybody. And then if you decide that you want to keep it anonymous, then nobody knows whose numbers are what, right? So
Yep, thank you.
you're welcome. You're welcome. So tonight I do have an example that I'm going to go over with you guys of somebody's debt picture. And I've also, Thursday night happens to be this week is the debt reduction night. So it's 2 in 1 week. It doesn't always work out that way, but this month it happens to be on the same, because I always do a debt reduction evening at least once a month on top of week 2, just because waiting for week 2 to roll back around again, sometimes people need to have that that more of a touch on that more often. So I do add that extra evening. So Thursday night this week is the debt reduction class, and it's going to be here on the Zoom link, same Zoom link, and it will be at the same time. I usually keep things at the same time. Now, having said that, I am going to throw a wrench into that. On Friday night, I'm doing a live Zoom for anybody interested, whether you're a member or not, whether you can invite anybody if you want to, or if you know of anybody that might be interested in a program or real estate and is curious about the program, they can ask me questions live. I'm going to be talking about it a little bit in the Facebook group and just inviting people about this. So it's basically going to be what makes the fishing formula different, and what are some of the struggles that a lot of real estate investors right now are facing, especially with a lot of the changes that are coming about. I did hint at it in Facebook group today, the public one, not the private one that you guys are only for you guys. But I did hint at the fact that, last year in July, they started doing, a lot of the banks started to pull back on lines of credit. So if someone had a line of credit as they were paying it down, they weren't letting them borrow back up to that available amount as previous before, but they were lowering the balance available to you as you were lowering your debt. And on some cases, they were actually pulling lines of credit due, like they were calling them due, depending on your debt load. And that's a very rare thing for them to do, but they did do that last year during COVID, because some of the concerns that they had were, with people that had lost their jobs and different things like that. So instead of, giving you some space and realizing that maybe a line of credit might be the thing that's going to help you get through for an emergency, in a lot of people's cases, they started calling them due and lowering the balances. So my comment was in Facebook today was, what happens to all those real estate investors who work with joint venture partners that use lines of credit to buy the property, or investors that use lines of credit to buy, put money down or to loan money, and or if you use a line of credit out of your own home to go and invest in another property. Anytime you leverage money by way of a line of credit, unlike a mortgage, mortgages years ago, back in the 80s, there was a bunch of mortgages in Canada that were being called due with the housing crash, especially in Alberta. And a lot of mortgages, people were doing due on, or they were just calling mortgages that were in default. They were just not giving a lot of time. And they made it so that you couldn't actually call a mortgage like that on someone. You had to, and well, what it was is when they went to renew, they weren't allowing people to renew in some cases unless they pre-qualified again. So they've changed that, and now they can't just call a mortgage due. If you're able to renew that mortgage based on your income and everything, you can keep your mortgage in place. But they've been changing that, and who knows what they're going to do in the coming year or even months. Everything is new. Everything is different that we're dealing with. And so this is one of the things that I wanted to educate people about, is to what you guys actually have that you may not realize that you have. Let me just make this a little brighter here for me. Because a lot of people don't realize what the fishing formula really will do for you. It's really, it covers, like I've said before, the 3 pillars of real estate investing, which is debt reduction. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. It talks about it shows you how to be in control of the income that you want to be making, and also how to be in control of the retirement that you want and when you want it, right? And it gives you the tools to be able to do all that regardless of where you are financially right now. So if you don't have money to invest in real estate, you don't have good credit, that's irrelevant. It's an even playing field, and you don't have to bring on joint venture partners or borrow money and get leverage to be able to do the fishing formula. And this is why I created it. When I first got into real estate, I didn't have credit really. Like, I was very young, 28 years ago, so 10, no. And, I was really, really young, and, I didn't have a lot of credit yet, didn't have money. The first house that we bought, we barely put any money down, and I didn't have to qualify for it because I didn't even know, because no one in my family had ever owned a home before. I was actually the first person to ever buy a house in my family. And so it was a whole brand new experience, and I wasn't, I had no preconceived notions of how it's supposed to go. So I just did what made sense according to the situation that I was currently in. And I expressed my situation to the seller, and it made sense to the seller. So that's how we ended up buying the property, was in a creative way where I didn't have to qualify for it and worry about a whole bunch of money down. And we did put some money down back then because I didn't have it perfected by then yet. But it was the very first house I ever bought was my own. But since then, I've gotten a lot better at it. But what I'm getting at here is it's designed so that it doesn't matter what level you're at. But the big thing that I wanted to talk about on Friday night was all the things that you have at your disposal as clients in the fishing formula, or anybody who wants to get into the fishing formula, because you guys literally will stand above any other offers that people get when it comes to their homes. So understanding what you have to offer other people by way of outcomes is really, really huge. If you clearly get that, you're not going to have any of these ideas that, well, what if I don't know what to say or what to do, or I'm nervous about negotiating or all these other things, because it blows it right out the window, because it's not about you. The focus becomes on the outcomes. Like I've said, if you focus on the fact that you're in the business of outcomes, because that's what the fishing formula is all about, you get your outcomes. But if you focus on the outcomes that other people need and the ones that you can give them, money will be the result, right? Because we're dealing with real estate, and real estate's got lots of zeros in it. But here's the thing is if you're focusing on those outcomes, well, first you need to know what those are. What are the outcomes that you can offer? So that's what I want to talk about on Friday night. And I just want to make the whole night about that. And also what outcomes are not in people's best interest. So I did put a post in the group as well by somebody who was wanting to put, they're not a member in the group. They're just a member in the Facebook group, but they're not here in the class. And they wanted to post the ad about the foreclosures. And I didn't want to target them and their name and the 2 other people that have been tagged in it already as liking it. I didn't want to do that because I'm not trying to single a person out, but I wanted to point out the whole concept of thinking that taking advantage of people that are in a situation that they can't help themselves, thinking that that's an okay or it's an opportunity, I think is a really dangerous way to think. So does did anyone not see the ad that I'm talking about? Okay.
I haven't seen it, Candy.
Okay, so basically what it is, it says, I'll paraphrase it. Are you prepared for all the foreclosures that are going to come up? Or are you going to be someone are you going to be able to cash in on all the foreclosures that are inevitably coming? Or are you going to be sitting on the sidelines, essentially, right? So are you going to cash in? Are you going to be able to take advantage of this great opportunity of all these foreclosures? And the first thing that comes to my mind is I have worked with so many people that have been through foreclosure and lost their homes, that I've seen how devastating it can be to lose a home. And to watch the pain that these people go through is unbelievable. Like working with people and helping people that are in a pre-foreclosure situation is something I love. I love helping those people, because most anybody else is going to be like the people that posted that ad and liked it. They're going to be looking at it like dollar signs. I'm going to try and get the best deal that I possibly can on this house and steal equity, make money when I buy by stealing somebody's equity. And I look at that like these people who are going to go through foreclosure, the reason they're in foreclosure is because they don't have the money to make up the arrears that they have, right? Let's be honest. That's the reason that they're in foreclosure. Whatever the reason is for not having the money may or may not be their fault, right? I mean, a lot of people have lost their jobs. It could be a health thing. Maybe somebody has died. Who knows? And they're losing their home. And the reason that they're losing it is because they don't have the money to make up the arrears, or probably they would. So if this was your family or you, how would you feel? Or maybe you even have been through this, but how would you feel if you knew that you had equity between $50,000 to $100,000 in equity in that property, and you were going to lose it because a foreclosure is going to eat up that much of your equity? How would you feel knowing that the person that's buying the property from you has every ability to not steal that money from you, and instead could do a real honest deal with you? But you don't have choice, because you can lose your equity and your credit, or just the equity. So this is the corner that a lot of people find themselves stuck in, is that they don't know how to help themselves. They don't have anybody that can help get them out of this situation. And so when we come along and we can show them how we not only can help them save their credit and build it back up again, but we can help make sure that they get 100% of their equity back, and they wouldn't have to list with a realtor and lose the realtor fees also. Because even just listing with the realtor, some people can't do that if they're in foreclosure or pre-foreclosure because they might not have enough equity in the property to pay the realtor and the arrears. And so they lose everything. Right? And to me, that's just a sad state of affairs. But if you can come along and you can show them the outcomes that are available to them where they don't have to lose that property, well, they probably will lose the property in most cases, but you can then put them into another property that they can afford and get them started again. And you can do it in exchange for some of their equity that they might put down, or even all of it for towards the next property. So you don't have to come out of pocket for it. Now you've got it. And, or you pay them back all of their equity and they just go rent somewhere else if that's what their choice is, but you can save their credit and their equity. What do you think the chances are that they're going to want to sell to you before anybody else? Right? And this is what everybody in this program now has the ability to do. And if you're brand new in here, we will get to that part. We do talk specifically about foreclosures and pre-foreclosures and how to help people in that situation, because it is a big deal. And we are probably going to see an awful lot of that in the coming years. But you now have the ability to stand out above the rest of the people out there that are going to go out there and try and steal their equity, cash in, take advantage of the great opportunity of foreclosures that are coming. But we can do that in a different way. We could take advantage of the fact that we know how to save them their credit, their equity, and maybe even get them into another house right away that they can start owning again. Okay, it's a totally different picture. So I can't wait for you guys to see that. And I'm going to be talking about that on Friday night. So if you want to attend, you feel free, or if you know of anybody else that you think might be interested in it, and or has been, wanting to do flips or renovations or foreclosures and stuff, and maybe wants to see a better way to do it, please feel free to invite them. Also, just so you know, and this isn't a ploy, it's totally up to you. You don't have to even, do this if you don't want to, but I pay for my marketing. If you do invite someone and they do end up joining, make sure you tell them that you invited them, because I do pay a referral. Okay, just so you know. So I could pay you or I could pay Facebook. Either way, it doesn't really matter to me. So you might as well, if you do invite someone, let them know to tell me. All right. Okay, so tonight, and that was for Friday. So, and I will be putting it in the Facebook groups, both Facebook groups before the end of the week. You'll see it a couple of times in there. All righty. Okay. So tonight I wanted to go over week two. Week two's, well, the fishing formula is kind of, we've got the three pillars, right? Well, and week two is really the first pillar, which is taking care of today's needs first. And that being, for a lot of people, debt. If debt is something that is consuming your income and or your time trying to pay it down, and this is, a lot of people's situation, then that's part of what we need to deal with before you dive into real estate investing. Knowing that your debt is being taken care of and that you're taking action steps to be able to eliminate that debt as fast as possible is really, really key, because the longer it takes you to pay off debt, the more you're paying in interest over and above the original amount that you borrowed in the first place. Okay. So there's a lot of really cool techniques that I'm going to share with you. Now, has anybody not got week two yet? Yeah, one person's in here, Ray, and on the other side, yeah, just so one. Okay, so yeah, and Ray, it just depends on when you came in. You just showed up. You just came in this weekend, so you're on week one. So you're actually, it's very rare that you're on the same schedule as me, unless you happen to come in last week when I did week one, or just before last week. Then you'll be on the same schedule going through 8 weeks. But don't worry about it. You're going to have the preview and then you're getting the lessons. So look at it that way. Okay, you're just getting it the other way around. But you get to always come back and rewatch these, and we do the debt reduction nights. You're actually going to have debt reduction basically twice this week before you even get your lesson next week. Okay. Alrighty, because you'll get week two next week. Alrighty then. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to sort of quickly take a look at what you got in week two as far as handouts, the most common ones that I want you to take a look at anyways. And let's see here. I've got which one have I got up in here? So let's start with this one here. Paying your debts off in less than half the time. So I'm just going to shrink up your pictures here right now. So if you have a question, please go down into, I think it's called, what is that down there? Let me just check, just make sure. Reactions. If you have a question, hit reactions and put your hand up. And then Heath or somebody can, Heath, if you don't mind, just sort of pay attention if somebody's got a question, and let me know. And if you guys want to have a chat in the chat, you feel free to do that. Keep it friendly and positive. I don't read the chat, but typically other people in the group will kind of keep an eye on that to make sure that somebody's lost or has a question. Just let me know. I just can't see you when I shrink you up so that I can read the screen, okay? Okie doke. So we want to be here. Okay, let me move this up out of the way. Okay, so the reason I came up with this was because I was overwhelmed myself with debt when I first started. I mean, not a lot, I had $30,000, but it was a lot to me in my 30s. And I ended up figuring out a way to pay off 39 rentals in 11 years. And part of it I did through the real estate, and part of it I did by just learning how money works. And I'm one of those people that I just can't let something go when I know that there's got to be a way for something to work the way I have it in my brain. That seems logical. So I'll not let it go until I figured it out. So this is a good thing for you guys, especially because now I'm sharing with you what I discovered, right? So I started playing around with how numbers work and how math works and different things like this. And so a lot of the week 2 is red pill. It's kind of like the Matrix. Do you want the blue pill or the red pill? You take the red pill, you can't go back, right? So, but it's really important information for you guys to go through, because most people have no idea how they're being conned by the banks, okay? So we go through a lot of the mortgage information. I'm not going to go into detail there because there's lots of information that you can read up and you can look it up for yourself, and you'll see that what I'm sharing with you is true. What I wanted to do is go through just the highlights of the debt portion here, just to make sure you're clear on all these things. So if you're going to meet with me, this section here, this particular one, paying your home off in about half the time of the years or less, it is less than that typically. Once you get going and you really see how things are working and how they can be approved upon, most people are around the 5 to 7 year mark. Some of you might be a little bit longer than that, depending on your income and your debt ratio on top of the mortgage as well. And whether or not you're doing the fishing formula, the second half of it, which is the income and or the debt, the retirement part of it, right? So there's 3 different components, and they all kind of work well together to help pay off the debt. But I want the debt thing to sort of be a standalone as well. So the first thing I want you to do, regardless of what kind of credit you have, it doesn't matter. We can help most of you in that sense anyways. And it does improve your credit. If your credit isn't so great, it will improve your credit by getting rid of debt and you know, showing the creditors that you actually can, you know, use money properly. But and most of the times it'll actually increase your credit limit as well on most things. So what I did here was I broke down a little bit of information, like, for example, the words mortgage and amortization and stuff. And I'll let you read through that part. But what I want you to do is to think about, you know, what debts do you have? What are your expenses every month? Do you have mortgages, car loans, student loans, credit cards, all those kinds of things? And if you want me to review it with you, now my big disclaimer, I say it every single time I do a video, is I'm not a financial advisor, but I have looked at so many different pictures of debt, you know, people's debt pictures, plus my own when I first got started. And I've analyzed so many different situations and just share my thoughts on what I see. And every time that I do that and someone takes action on what I've shown them, they get the results that they want. So although I have no numbers and degree behind my name on this topic, I do know what I'm talking about. But consider it educating you, showing you how to do it for yourself. I'm not going to advise you on what you should or shouldn't do, but we'll just have a brainstorming session. So if that's something that you'd like to do with me, I'm certainly open to doing that. In fact, I love doing that with people so that they can see what's possible. And once you've had one meeting with me, typically that's all you need because you start to get it. And then you start coming to the debt reduction classes and you'll understand it even more. So in this case, what I want you to do is I want you to write down everything that you have, like what do you owe on all of your debt? What is available? What is the total borrowing a limit amount? And then what is left over after the debt, the difference between the limit that you can borrow, the debt, and what's left over. I need to know what the interest rates are. If it's a mortgage, what is the amortization on it? How many years do you have left owing on it? Is it biweekly or monthly payment? And is there any kind of limitations as for lump sum payments? So for example, some banks allow annual lump sum payments, some allow monthly matching payments, some allow both, some of them allow a combination of those. And sometimes it's not a 12-month between each payment. Sometimes it's within 12 months or the anniversary date. So all those details are really important. Now, the other thing that's really important is how much do you make every single month, and on average, right? We're not going to talk about anomalies, but on average, what do you make per month? And then go through your bank statements or whatever you have available to you to get a really good, clear picture on what your expenses are every month. Because when we have that full picture, we know how much do you have left over, or do you have anything left over at the end of the month, so that it gives me an idea of what you need to focus on in order to get yourself out of debt. Okay, those kinds of things really help. And then you can book an appointment with me. Now, if we have a one-on-one, here's the exchange, here's the deal, okay? I'll give you my time free of charge on that. I have no problem with that. In exchange, I like to use that example to share with everyone in the class. I won't put your name to it. I won't say, hey, this is, Susan Jones's scenario, and everybody knows who Susan Jones is, and that's a made-up name. And then, everybody's going, oh my gosh, look at her mess, right? That's not what we do. What it is I don't tell anybody whose it is, and I just share the situation so that you can all learn all the different ways that other people, are paying off debt, and, what might work for you for different scenarios. Because once you're into this for 3 or 4 months or 6 months or whatever, you might go, okay, now I've paid off the majority of certain things. Now, what are my options? What should I do? Because it's kind of a reevaluating on a regular basis, especially once you get really good at knowing what to do with your money. So what this week is all about is showing you some tips and tricks on what is really helpful to be able to put more money towards your debt and the principal of that debt, so that you save on interest, but also using your money to your benefit, not to the bank's benefit. Okay, so this particular thing here is all about, listing all of your expenses, write down like food, heat, electricity, fuel, everything. If you're someone that goes out and you always have cash in your pocket, and at the end of the week, the cash is gone. I don't care what you're spending it on, but how much are you spending, right? So that we have an idea of what is your expenses. So once you get that accumulated, then give me a shout. We'll make an appointment, email me. I think I've got it down here. Do I have it in here somewhere? I usually do. Should have it in here somewhere, my email. Anyways, most of you have it. Candy@foundationsforsuccess.com. And Candy is with an I. And just email me and we'll set up a time to talk about that, okay? So that's one. Is there any questions so far about that? About how to organize and figure out what your debts are to have an appointment with me? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, that's good. Let me go to the next thing here then. Okay. So this one here is really, really expanded. Let me just bring this down a bit. Okay, so this one here, let's get back to the top. Okay, so financial slavery versus financial freedom. So there's lots of, I've explained a little bit about this before. The H is like the hybrid between, all the 3 pillars and so forth like this of the real estate investing. So I'm not going to go over this. I assume you can all read, and I don't want to insult you by sitting here reading and wasting time that way. Okay, so this goes over how to use your money to your best benefit. And we talks about checking accounts and savings accounts, and just different tricks and tips here, to making sure that if you're going to do extra lump sum payments, that the banks are applying it to the principal of your debt, not to the interests. Make sure you get that in writing if possible, whenever possible. What else do I want to just sort of highlight here? Okay, so that's good. I wanted to just quickly look at this. I'm going to expand it so we can see here. But before I do, one of the things that I want to make clear, there's really small little things that you can do that have a massive impact, but not necessarily right at the beginning, depending on your situation. So I'm going to paint you a picture of a worst case scenario so you can see how good that actually can be in the long run. So for example, my worst case scenario client, it was a brother and sister team, and they had been in another real estate course that they went into. They were already, well, she was in debt, he wasn't in debt, but between the two of them, they decided they would get into real estate to help her get out of debt, but also for them to just be able to do something like this ongoing down the road. And so they bought into another course that's very well known here in Canada. I think they're in the US as far as I recall too, doesn't matter. But they spent between them $60,000. It was one of those weekend things that they went to, and upselled them and upselled them and upselled them. And before they knew it, they were so heavily in debt. And what they were being taught was all US based and didn't work here. Most of it was focused on wholesaling. So they were realizing very quickly that what they had bought into just buried them financially. And she knew she couldn't afford to pay it back. And she was feeling sick about it because she borrowed it from her brother, right? So, and he borrowed it from his home. So now his wife is like, we're never going to see that, are we? So I said, yes, you will. So here's what we ended up doing. Was first thing we did is I went through his debt situation. He was able to start paying off his debts and getting that paid down really quickly. And he started dropping his mortgage really, really fast. He's actually done a testimonial on my website. His name is Keith. And it is spelled backwards, the I and the E, just so you know, I didn't misspell it. It's actually how he spells it. But he did a testimonial about how fast the mortgage pay down was working for him. So if you're ever on my site, foundationsforsuccess.com, you can see that there. But his sister's was a different picture. And she had, if she was lucky, $5 extra over and above her expenses every single month. Like it was like almost break even. And she was literally living on the lowest amount of food and everything else that she possibly can. Everything was scratch, everything was canned, everything was like, special Kmart prices kind of thing, right? And so anyways, those of you who know what Kmart is, you guys know Kmart? Everybody's of that generation. You guys remember Kmart? Good. I just thought I aged myself again. I do that all the time. Anyways, it was really tight for her, and she just didn't think it was going to be possible. So even if you're break even, which is basically where she was at, we can help you. If you're in a negative, I can still show you how to do things, but you will start needing to do at least a deal or two to start bringing in money over and above, because you can't pay down something if you don't have money to pay it down. But even if you're just break even, we can start doing things. Even $100 negative will still typically work, because what we want to do is we want to take the interest rate that you're paying, which credit cards are really high. In fact, they're higher than a mortgage, but quite often, as you see in the videos from this week, even a 4% mortgage can take longer to pay off than a 20% interest on simple interest credit card, okay? So it just depends on what timeline you are on the mortgage. The closer you are to having less owing, then of course, 4% on a lower amount is not going to take as long to pay off. But with the credit card scenario, what I always tell people right off the bat, there's a couple of little tricks to understand about money first. One is that the banks want your money in the bank. Because when your money is in the bank on their books, they can borrow up 4 times the value of the money on their books, and they do. So they push the idea of savings accounts, and they push the idea of, or encourage at least the idea of automatic deposits from your boss into your accounts. And the reason they do that is because then all your money is in the bank. Well, one of the reasons they do that is the money's in the bank and they can use it. And they use it for their benefit, not yours. And it's your money, right? So how many of you have a savings account? Right? Okay, why? What was, maybe after you've read this week, you go, I have no idea why, but before that, why would you have a savings account before that? Anybody want to share? You have to unmute.
For a rainy day.
Rainy day? Okay.
Yeah. And to just, retiring and then making sure you have money in case something else doesn't come along.
Okay, that's a very common reasons. Yeah, anybody else?
Yeah, just to,
Expenses.
What did you say, Eric?
sorry, just to segregate my funds into different things that I'm interested in doing with the money.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then what was the other one, Melissa? Was it
Expenses like a car breakdown or repairs.
for emergency money for you're building it up and saving it for that? Blaine, go ahead.
Silly as this is going to sound, interest bearing.
Interest bearing, yeah.
The amount of pitiful interest that they give you. I know it's a very, very low end kind of reason why, but it is a reason why some do that.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
It's a vehicle where I can get my pays deposited into.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Vacation fund.
A vacation fund, right? So savings as in, yeah, we're using it to save, right? David Atwell, also you had, sorry, go ahead, you had your hand up.
When I got my checking account, savings account was tied in with it,
Oh, okay, so it just was.
but you still get no interest.
Part of the package. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
times there's no interest. They used to
Zero.
do interest because they justified them being able to ask you for your social insurance number, because legally they can't unless they're paying you an income, right? Because it's for income tax purposes. That's the only reason that they're legally not allowed to make you give that number. You can say no, and I always do. I had a conversation with my son, both of them, when we went in to do their when they went to open up a bank account. I went with them, and my oldest son knew it was going to be an education, so he sat back and let me go with it. But my youngest son was rolling his eyes. He's like, "Oh, Mom, come on! Not everybody has to learn something every time." But the banker that we ended up sitting down with was in his early 20s, and what should have been in his mind a quick 15-20 minute meeting ended up being almost an hour and a half. And at the very beginning, the guy was really frustrated. And then after a while, he started to go, "What? Are you kidding? Seriously?" And he didn't want the meeting to end because he was learning so much about it. My son was laughing. So what it ended up happening is I said, he wanted social insurance numbers. And I said, "Well, we're not giving you that." "Well, you have to give us that." "No, we don't. You're not going to be paying him an income." And then we started talking about, the interest rates and all the different things about an account that's important to know. And not only that, but by signing, when you open up an account, you do sign a document. Every single one of you, if you have a bank account, you have signed it, that if the government deems necessary for the good of the country, they can take the money out of your account and use it. Okay, just so you know. I don't typically, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say, I don't advise. I can't use that word. I don't personally leave much money in the bank ever because they can take it. Just saying. You guys do what you want. Now, here's the other side of it. And the reason they want social insurance numbers is because they can track you more and they can mark your credit. Okay, just that's another thing that they can do, and they can look up everything that you have and so forth. Now, if you're borrowing money from them, that's another thing. Of course, they're going to have your social insurance number for that. to find out what your credit rating is, but they don't even need that. They just need your birth date. They can look everything up that way. So there's always all kinds of different ways they can go at it. Mary Jane, I noticed that your hand's up. Did you have a question before I go on? I saw you took your volume off, but I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, you got to turn one of those off because I can see you on one screen and hear you in another.
Issue, I can't.
Here's what I'll do. There,
Sorry,
I muted it. There we
I
go.
need to keep you on my phone. I can't do it on the laptop, but I just.
Okay, so then we're not going to be able to do it that way. Why don't you type it in the chat and then I'll get somebody else to read it to me, okay? Because you've got the two going on and it's echoing back and forth.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah, that works.
Okay, good. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm trying to figure it out. Oh, shoot. You had said something just a minute ago, like that blows my mind that they could take your money or whatever. But
Yeah.
you said something about something MAR or something. I didn't quite get the term. You said, I thought you said something MAR.
Does anybody know what I may
Could
have
it be
said?
MERS?
No,
Just right around that time, and I didn't quite catch it.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Maybe when you
Okay.
listen to the replay, if you get it, then you can send me an
Maybe.
email.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not sure what exactly I've said. That was it. Now, apparently Nelda and somebody else has a question in there in the chat. If somebody wants to, let's see here. Where was that?
Where do you, Nelda says, then where do you keep your money? In a
Oh,
safe
okay.
at home?
So where I keep my money is typically in investments of some kind. I have a lot of different things going on all the time. I have equity in property. I have gold and cryptocurrencies, lots of different things. So it just depends on land, different things like that. I like to mix my money around in different things that I know I have a little bit more control on, and or something that I find is a little bit fun to play with. So like cryptos, it's not for everybody. A lot of people find them extremely risky, and that's fine. But you're asking, that's the thing. I'm personally anywhere other than the bank. I would rather bury it in the backyard than the bank. At least they can't take it. Okay, awesome. Okay, Dave, go ahead.
Just wondering, do you know if that applies the same with credit unions? I've heard that they don't necessarily follow the same.
I
guidelines.
don't know about credit unions. You would have to check to see the paperwork that you signed to see whether or not they have that clause in there, but banks do. That's a good question. Okay, cool. Now, as far as what I was saying about with this woman here, just 1 second, Cindy Lee, let me just move on a little bit more. If you could write that down. Okay, and then so what I was going to say going forward here, with this woman who didn't have cash flow, the reason I wanted to bring up the idea about the banks and stuff and who has a savings account is because she had a savings account that had some money in it for a rainy day in case something happened and she got behind and she couldn't work. She knew that she was so tight to the line that if she didn't have something that would at least pay her mortgage, she could lose her home. So she was at least doing that. Now, the thing is though, is what I showed her right off the bat is I said, okay, so you've got some credit cards that are like 19%. She had one that was 19.99. She had one that was 29.99%. And I said to her, I said, how much do you have in that savings account? So I can't remember the exact amount, but let's just call it $5,000. So that money was sitting there making 2%, which is less than inflation, right? She's making 2%. It's such minimal amount. They're not even giving her a T4 at the end of the year or anything to claim it on taxes. Okay, so just think of that. Okay, so if that money is sitting in the account and it's not making her any money, but she's got debt over on this side that's costing her 29.99%, where's her money better spent? If she takes that $5,000 and puts it on the credit card and knocks that credit card down by 5%, does she not just earn 29.99% on that money? Tax-free? And is that money not still available to her? Because she's paid down the limit that she owes, she could borrow it again if she needed to, right? But she's thinking, if it's in my bank, I own it, I have it in my possession, but the bank could take it. But she thinks she's got it in her possession. In the meantime, she's paying almost 30%, let's call it 30% on the same amount of money. But if that money from her savings account goes and sits on the credit card, pays it down by that same amount of 5,000, she's just made herself a profit that she didn't have to pay, because she would have had to pay it. And it would have taken her years to pay it. So it would have been more than just 30% for 1 year. It would have been 30% for as many years as it takes to pay that off. So she actually made a profit in reverse that's tax-free, and it's still available to her in the case of an emergency. So that was one thing. The next thing is she had many cards that she had been paying down, but she didn't have a lot of room on all of them, but she had some room. So we started with one that had a little bit of room. I think it was like around $1,200. And I said, okay, so let's take some debt from one of the other cards that's a high interest rate that's left over, that, you know, we put the money from her savings account on that, whatever's left over. Let's just say it was around $1,200, right? I don't remember her exact numbers, to be honest with you right now, but let's just say it was $12,000. Those of you who want, you can have a pen and paper and follow along. So let's just say on one of her cards, if she'd have had $6,200 in debt and she took $5,000 from her savings account and put it on that card, then it brings it down to $1,200, right? And then if she's got another card that's got at least $1,200 still available on it, she can do a balance transfer of this $1,200 to this other card and have a 0% balance transfer. So in other words, that $1,200 is now at 0% interest. So now she's not paying 30% in interest at all. So all her payments are going to go towards principal only for a year on that $1,200, and the $5,000 is gone. And she now has a credit card with $6,200 available on it because it's been paid off, right? So on her card where she had $1,200 still left available, she also had a debt on it. Let's say it was $5,000. So now the card that's clear can do a 0% balance transfer for the money that is not, that was originally on that first card, that is at 20%, 19.99%, and transfer it over to the one that's now clear. And now she's got all of her money down to 0% interest owing on it. And she has a year to start paying payments on it at 0%. You guys see that? So she just took something that was costing her 20% and 30% and took it to 0 and paid $5,000 of it off right away. And this is someone who had no idea what she was supposed to do, was terrified, and was able to pay that debt off in a very short period of time by doing that. So I want to share an example, a live example, but before we do that, I just want to quickly show the spreadsheet of what I had up on the screen earlier, just so you can see something here. Something else that's really important on a credit card. Now, this is one that wasn't put to 0%, but just even if you didn't put something to 0%, if you take all of your debts, everything that you pay every month, and I don't know how clear you can see this, but it is in your handouts. If you just look at this, this is an example of a couple that were making, I think it was $6,000 a month, right? So $1,500 a month was their mortgage payment. So you can't pay mortgage payments typically with a credit card. So I said, just keep that in your bank account. But if you take the 3,000 and the 3,000 that they make in the month, like twice a month, halfway through the month, and then at the beginning minus the $1,500 for the mortgage payment, then this is money that's coming in. And if they put that income instead of into their bank account, where it's not doing anything for them, similar to a savings account, if they put everything that they can pay on a card on the card itself, let's just say you're putting $500 a month on your bank, on your credit card every single month. Now, their $500 a month that they would have normally had to pay, and this is the same thing with this other client of mine, the sister, when she started putting her paychecks on her card instead of in her checking account and just paying her payments to her card, she was able to create cash flow. So for example, in this case with these people, they have a monthly expense of a credit card, and I can't remember if it was around 500 or more, $300 to $500. I think I've got it written in the handouts here. But by just paying $1,500 and the $3,000, they have literally paid their credit card payment, right? Just by doing that. So everything over and above is principal payment, and it's coming down, and that creates that cash flow. Just by depositing the check, it pays for the payment. It covers your payment, which is really cool. A lot of people don't think about that. So once that money goes in here, then what we ended up doing is this debt here was new. This, I think, was their land taxes, and it couldn't be moved. It was monthly tax for their property, but everything else that was possible, some things were like gas for the car and certain things that they couldn't move near the end. And some of them were perishable groceries and such like that, that they couldn't move to the end of the month. But they ended up moving most of their debts, like their car loan and their car interest and things like cell phone bills, any kind of credit bills that they have to pay. I should say credit bills, any kind of utility bills, gas, anything like that, that you can possibly move to the end of the month. If you make all your payments closer to the end of the month, which is what they did here, $725. And I think that, yeah, so this was, I think, groceries here and then gas here and some groceries. You have to sometimes have your perishables every single, like throughout the month, but anything that can be moved down further is better. Now I do know that they had, yeah, they've got the car payment. I think that was the car payment here, and they ended up moving it to the end of the month as well after a while. And the reason they did that was because, for example, this $500, if it's debt, now they're paying interest on that debt. But if you don't have the debt until closer to the end of the month, then you've got weeks where you're not paying interest on that debt. So if you can move all of your payments, as many of them as possible, to the end of the payment period, not the end of the month, but the end of the payment period, which means you have to call your bank and find out when the payment period is for your card. And you want to pay, you also want to know what the adjustment, the interest adjustment date is for that card, because it's not always the same as the end of the payment period. Okay, you want to know what the interest adjustment date is and make your payment just before that, so that if you bring as much of that debt as possible to the end of that payment adjustment date, then you're not paying interest on it for days, even if it's a little bit. So for example, if she had $5 cash flow, but she's paying $7 in interest, she's building her cash flow availability by paying less in interest, right? For those of you who can't do balance transfers, if you can't get it at 0% yet, if you don't have the room on any cards, once you get room in your cards, you can start doing balance transfers once you get a cushion. So this covers the idea that if you don't even have room on a card, you can start creating room on a card. Does that make sense? We got 2 questions now. I'm going to go with Cindy Lee and then MJ. Go ahead, Cindy Lee.
You answered it.
Oh,
Yeah.
All right, MJ's next.
I had one more question. That was like a safety deposit box, because if you're in a really low income and you don't have credit card debt, and you just want someplace for your cash that's not a savings account, what about a safety deposit?
If you wanted to do something like that, that's completely different. I'm talking about how to deal with debt and where's your money better
Yeah.
spent if you have debt, right? And if you have a mortgage, it's the same idea. if you have a mortgage as opposed to, now the thing is with a mortgage though, is the money's not available to you because a mortgage is a one-way lending instrument. So your money goes in, but it doesn't come back out unless you've got a line of credit portion attached to it, that as the mortgage comes down, it's credited to the line of credit side. And then you've got that for an emergency, right? That's one way to look at that. So that way you don't have ever money sitting there doing nothing ever. It's always working for you if you're applying it to debt, including a mortgage. And a lot of times you can, depending on how much your balance is on your mortgage, you can sometimes get a line of credit mortgage, okay, like a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. So, and there are companies other than just banks that will give you up to 60% of the value of your home instead of a mortgage by way of a line of credit, so that you can actually do that. There's a couple of companies, actually, some of them are better than others as far as their rules around all that. I'm not going to get into that at the moment right now, but I wanted to just let you know that whenever, as long as your money can become two-way, where it can come back to you in the case of an emergency, if there's money that's costing you money, like debt that's costing you money, if you have the ability to put money that's doing nothing for you against that debt, as long as you can borrow it back in the case of an emergency, it might as well sit there and save you interest, which is a profit in reverse.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And maybe if you just take that hand down so I know that you're answered. MJ, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, hon.
I don't know how to take the hands off. You answered it.
Oh, go back down to reactions and click it again. Okay. So
Okay.
what I wanted to do is I just wanted to clarify that whether you have room in a card or no room in a card, it is possible to create room on a card, to create cash flow where you think there is no cash flow. And quite often people just get buried in debt and they keep making their minimum payments, and they're so buried under that debt, but they've got money put aside for in case of an emergency because they know at some point that this is going to crash, and they're trying to hoard some money to keep themselves safe. But they don't realize is that they've fallen into the lies that the banks are teaching them. The banks know full well about this trick. They know it, but they're not teaching it to you to keep you out of debt, because the more you owe them, the more they're more in control of you they are. They want you to be indebted to them because that's how they control your actions and what you do with money. And you know, if you don't have control of your money, they can't control you. It's just the way it is. It's that old saying, he who has the gold makes the rules, right? It's literally, that's the way it is. So if we go, okay, John, go ahead, and then I'll go into this example.
Hi, Candy.
Hi, John.
Just a quick question about the 0% credit cards. What if you can't get one?
Okay, so first of all, is like, if I won't ask if that's your scenario, but if a person has more than one card and there's no room on it, it's maxed out, in other words, there is no room to do a balance transfer. So the next step would be to ask for another card. If you can't get another card, then you've got to create room on those cards. Typically the line of credit, as it comes down, they don't typically lower the line of credit as long as you're making your payments and you're starting to make headway on that. If at some point when you start to create a cushion between the maximum allowable borrowing limit to what your debt is, just by paying that down, like I was saying, by moving all your debts to the end of the month, putting any money that you have against it that's sitting in the savings account or whatever to save on interest, you create that cushion. And even just a small cushion of $1,000, you can do a 0% balance transfer now within these cards. You do need two cards to do that typically, though, because you need to be able to move one to another and then and back and forth and play that game back and forth till it's gone.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah. And you can usually, what I always do is start off asking for 1.5 years, and then they kind of laugh. And then they'll go, well, we might be able to get 9 months. And I'd say, well, to be honest with you, I really need it to be closer to 1 year. If you can figure out a way to give me that, that would really be helpful for me. They typically will give you 1 year. because of the fact, like I've had some go, well, we'll give you 9 months or we'll give you 10 months. And, you know, you can usually eke them up to a year. It just depends on who you're dealing with typically. The reason I try to go for the year just gives you more time, right? But they know that most people will never pay it off. It's kind of like the brick. They're going to offer you, 2 years, no interest payments on your furniture, as long as you pay it off within the timeline. If you go 1 minute past that deadline, you're paying interest retroactive, right? And it's all due, or they're going to come and collect it, the furniture, and you still will owe the debt. But so here's the thing, is the same thing with credit cards, is you want to make sure it gets paid on time. So what happens when the year comes and it's not quite paid off? Then you just do balance transfers again. Okay, to bring them down again, to keep them at that 0%, to give yourself a little bit extra time again. Okay, Blaine, go ahead.
Now, on a balance transfer, I understand that you have up to a year to pay off the balance of what you put onto that transfer.
Yeah.
Or, as I understand it, maybe you can clarify this for me. Say you put $10,000 on a balance transfer and you pay off $9,000, but you're not able to pay off that last 1,000 within the allotted time period. Is the interest retroactive based on the 10 grand
Yeah.
or the 1,000 that's left over?
10 grand. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That's
Thank
why
you.
you want to do a balance transfer of that 1,000 to another card.
Prior to the time that it comes due. So
Yeah,
that you
I would
can,
typically be looking at that at least 2 months in advance, just to be on the safe side.
not to say that it's going to happen, but it could
No,
for
and
whatever
it
reason.
it
right?
actually does happen. So where people get caught off guard. And so, I've had people say, I've actually had a meeting with someone just the other day, and they're like, I've got to pay this off in the next month or so. And I said, well, okay, so here's what we got to do. We got to look at this, this, and this. And part of that is like, let's move it to another card and buy yourself some more time. And they're like, okay, cool. I didn't think of that. So that was really good, because they were panicking about, how do I get this paid off, right? Well, not panicking, but it was a concern, right? So that's one way to do it, is just to come up with another. Now, some people, their credit is really crappy. So for example, a friend of mine, she got herself in a little bit over her head, and she had been in real estate investing for a long time. She had done building and developing. I met her. She was one of my students. That's how we became friends. And then she became a mother very late in life. She had a 12-year-old already, and at 49, she had triplets, and her husband walked out the door. So she's all on her own and everything. She got into trouble financially, and she couldn't get extra credit. So what she ended up doing was her cousin got her another card under her name. And so she was able to do transfers that way to start getting ahead. So I was showing her how to do that, and so that she could finally do it. And then she got herself completely out of debt again. So it's just that things start, well, I mean, that enough said. She had triplets by herself at 49 and a 12-year-old at home. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Enough said there. For sure.
that's gonna get anybody. So anyways, yeah. So there's almost always a way out. And if you're so stuck that it's so negative, and that can happen too, because I am meeting with somebody that's their situation, and is that they're very negative. And so we have to look at, okay, let's get you into doing some deals. Because if that's the case, then we need to take some pressure off by doing just one deal is going to put, at least $25,000 in your pocket plus monthly income, right? That right off the bat is going to take pressure off for most of you, if that's the case that you have. All right. So let's look at this other scenario here. This person, let's see here. If you've got a pen and paper, you want to follow along. It's not super complicated, which was nice, because I can actually, you guys can follow it pretty easy as an example. So this person does not have a mortgage, so we don't have to get into that tonight. Okay. But they do have a line of credit and 4 Canadian credit cards. We'll start with the Canadian. Okay. So on the line of credit, this is this is the information that you need. So as you're writing this down, I would put on the left-hand side, put LOC for line of credit, and then put CC, 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 CC for credit cards underneath, okay? And then beside that, just one line up, put a label limit, borrowing limit, and then put available, and then put debt, then put monthly payment, and then interest. So I'll go over it again because it might have gone fast. So on line of credit, what I want you to do, line of credit, underneath limit, put 8,000 was the limit, the total available limit on the line of credit. They currently still have 2,500 available. So under available is 2,500. Under debt, they owe 5,500 on the line of credit. Under payment, they're paying $500 a month on the line of credit. And under interest, they're paying 10.5% interest. Okay, so that's the information that we need to have when we go through your numbers. So on the first credit card, the available limit was 18,000. Still available to borrow is 2,500, same as the line of credit. The total debt on that credit card is 15,500. They pay $500 a month on that credit card, and the interest rate is 13.99%. Okay, second credit card, the available limit is 7,000. They still have available 3,900. The debt on that card is 3,100. They paid $200 a month. And the interest rate is 21.9%. Credit card number 3 is 4,000 is the available limit, or it's the total limit. The available amount still is 1,000. The debt on it is at 3,000. They pay $300 a month. And the interest rate is 21.9%. And then the fourth credit card, the available limit is 8,000. And the debt is 0, so they still have 8,000 available. Obviously, they're not making any payments on that one. And they didn't have the interest rate for me on that one. Okay, which doesn't really matter. So under total available, still available is 17,900. So if you want to put a line and tally it, total, the 17,900 is still available on the credit cards and line of credit. The total debt is 27,100. And the total monthly payments on those debts are $1,500 a month. Just on debts, okay? So there's a couple of things that we look at when I look at something like this. There's a couple of things. One of the first things some people will think of is this, well, which card has the largest amount of debt with the most amount of interest, right? Some people just look at the interest, some people look at the most debt, some people look at the combination of the two. I do both of those plus one more thing. So when I looked at this, I went, okay, so there's 17,900 available to move things around. That's how much is available to start with. Now, that's $10,000 less than what, or almost $11,000 less than the debt that's there total though, right? So just to move all of it to available spots would mean that there'd be like $11,000 just about that's still at an interest rate, unless you get a little creative. So the first thing that I see is the fourth credit card has $8,000 available. And it's currently got no debt on it. We don't know what the interest rate will be, but it doesn't matter because we know that if we do a balance transfer, it's going to be at 0%. Right? So which one do you start with? Which one do you start moving over? Okay, so there's a couple of things that I look at. So first of all, the highest interest rate ones, there's 21.9% twice. One of them is paying $200 a month, and one is $300 a month. One of them is $1,000 available, or I mean a $3,000 debt, and one of them is the $3,100 debt. And then there's the line of credit and the credit card with the $15,500, which is a large chunk at 14%. So there's a couple of different things that you can do. If you look at that $18,000 or $8,000 one and the two highest amounts, right? If you combine those two, the 6,100, and you transfer those over to the 8,000 card at 0%, now instead of paying $200 a month, or sorry, between the two $500 a month at 21.99%, you would have availability to put $500 a month against that 8,000 every single month, and pay that just as principal payment. So let's just look at that. If we took credit card number 2 and 3, and we did a balance transfer over to credit card number 4, right? Now, credit card number 4 has, where's my pen? I'm going to track this as I do it too, because I can't always remember exactly what I said to them live, because I'm always looking at it from fresh eyes every time. So that means we've got 19, well, I know that math, $1,900 left over, right? So we would have $1,900 if we transferred 6,100 over to the 8,000, and we'd have made that at 0% instead of at 20, basically 22%, right? So now they've made 22% return on that money annually until it was, paid off. That's one thing. Then it still leaves $1,900, right? So you could look at one of the other cards. What could we move over? The other thing that you can look at is now these two cards, 7,000 and 4,000, which is available. You could look at, could you increase the 7,000 to 10 and the 4,000 to 5 and have $15,000, right? Because quite often if you pay it off, they might let you do a balance transfer just by increasing it a little bit. And then you could transfer almost all of the $15,000 over to between those two cards, 10 to one and 5 to another. And then the extra $500 can go to the $8,000 card because we have $1,900 space left. And now you've taken all of the credit cards and put them to 0% interest. Then you've still got the $5,500 line of credit, right? Well, if the first credit card is now paid off, the $15,500 is no longer there, you could transfer the $5,500 to the $18,000 first credit card and put it at 0%. And then they've taken the entire debt load of $27,100 and made it 0% interest on all of it. And then they can start paying $1,500 a month to pay those off because that's what they could afford before. So without even increasing their debt load, how much they're paying every month, they're going to be able to pay off all of these credit cards and the line of credit at 0%, because once it comes close to the end of that year, you just do balance transfers again for anything that's left over. But if you take this 27,100, because it's all at 0%, so it's all principal, right? And you divide it by 1,500, it'll be paid off in 18.07 months, so a year and a half. And he'd be debt free there. Now, this is the interesting thing. So I asked this person to let me know how long it would take if they could look it up on the credit card statements, because you do have this on your credit card statements. It's kind of fun to go look this up. So I asked him to go look at this. And on the one credit card, where the interest was 13.99. So that was the one that 15,500. Anybody want to guess how many years that was going to take to pay that card off? Have some fun. Somebody guess.
31?
31 years? Blake?
90.
22. What did you say?
67.
67. And Mike, you said 90?
90.
Okay, all right.
And I said 50.
Okay, anybody else want to guess?
45.
42, 45. None of you are even close. 127 years.
Oh,
Crazy.
I win.
Wow.
Being paid off in 18 months.
Now that's at the minimum payment, is that correct?
That's making the minimum required payment. Yeah,
Yeah, what would that be? Do you know?
I'm not.
It doesn't mean it's any
Well, it
better.
would be at least at the interest rate plus a bit more because they do, you do have to pay some principal. They can't just take interest only payments from you. It does have to be some principal. So let's just have a look here. So
Not to be just playing devil's
15,500.
advocate.
Well, yeah, 15,500 times 0.1399. So, and then divide that by 12 payments. So it's going to be at least $200 a month.
Yeah, so they're paying $500 a month on that.
Yeah,
It would take half of that time, but even still,
even still.
I'm not trying to justify it, just to look at the numbers in the way they are, for sure.
And that was the one that was at 13.99. So the other ones, one of them was going to be 25 years. And another one was going to be 36 years. Isn't that crazy? And the other one was clear title. So we've just changed it all to 0%, and it's going to take 18 months. If all he pays is $1,500 a month. That takes care of everything.
And are there really that many people that actually only make the minimum payment on a credit card?
Most people, actually, it's the majority, and they know that.
Wow. See, I never do that.
Yeah.
It's got to be 5 times the amount of the whatever it is there
Yeah.
as a minimum
More
payment.
than that, more.
Preferably. if it-
Oh, way more.
If you took that minimum payment, it was 180, but I rounded it up to 200 because of some principal going towards it, right? So let's just say you paid, let's just even go with the 180, just interest only, right? $180 times 20, or no, 120, what am I saying? $180 times 127 months, or no, that's years. Oh my gosh. Times 12 months.
244 months.
12 months is $274,320 on a $15,500 loan.
It's insane.
That was
shocking.
$274,000.
Yeah, that's low shocking.
You know, Candy,
Yeah.
years ago, we had a bank manager who worked for one of the big fives do a presentation when I worked for a private college, and she did a presentation to our students. And she said, most people live in their line of credit and their credit cards. Those were her clients.
Say that one last part again. The most
They live in their line of credit and their credit cards.
Yeah, most people do.
She said most.
They get started and they don't know how to get out of
Can't
it.
get out, yeah.
Now, if you use them the right way, like I've been showing you, it's great. If you run it, if you spend money and then you put all your money every single month on it to pay it down, then you don't pay any interest if you paid off within 30 days. As long as you pay off more or at least as much as you spend every month, you'll be okay. And if you get where you put, like you bought something that's going to cost you more, then for a couple of months, you want to make sure you're moving everything closer to the end of the payment period so that you pay the least amount of interest possible and or do a balance transfer at 0%. If you get overwhelmed, if you've got too much debt, that's what you need to end up doing. Now, the cool thing is if you can pay off, for example, in this case, it would be $27,000 in 18 months, right? So 27, that's 18,000 a year, right? On average, because 27 divided by in thirds, right? And then, because a year and a half, right? So that's every 6 months, you're paying off 9. So in a year, you're paying off 18. If you took, once the credit cards are paid off, if this person had a mortgage and their mortgage was, you know, closer to within the first half of their mortgage term, right? So say it's 25 years, so first 12 and a half years, if you're still in that range, then you could borrow 18,000 from your credit card, do an annual lump sum payment on your mortgage, because amortized interest is very expensive. Because you're paying, you owe the most at the beginning of your mortgage. That's why it looks like it's front end loaded with interest, but it's only because the principal, it's based on a declining balance. The interest is based on a declining balance. So the more you owe at the beginning, seems like you're paying more interest, right? Well, you are. The majority of your payments going towards interest because interest gets paid before principal. And then as your principal gets paid down, the interest owed is less. So you want to pay off as much of the principal as possible in the first half of your mortgage, especially to save yourself the interest over the amortization, the full amortization of your mortgage. Because if you don't, you'll still pay the same amount of interest. So these biweekly payments, they're really not saving you anything. They're shortening the period of time, but you're paying more annually to make up for it because you're making extra payments every year to make up for the year's shortening. You're not paying less, you're just paying more on the front end because you're paying an extra 2 biweekly payments in a year, equivalent to 1 extra month, which is principal and interest. But if you took your credit card and you put a lump sum payment of 18,000 against the credit, you would have to take a draw and then put it on because you can't just pay it directly from your card on a mortgage. But then if you paid off that credit card at 0% within a year, you just paid off $18,000 at 0%. And if you did that every year, that mortgage is going to get paid down even faster. And then if you do a couple of fishing deals, you could pay it off even faster. Do you see that? Do you see how it starts to accelerate and accelerate? When you get one property off, let's just say you paid off your own primary home, and then you buy an income property. And you're used to already paying, say, $2,000 a month on mortgage and taxes, or maybe $2,500 or more, and you're no longer having to pay it. Would it make sense to put it towards the property, your income property? Because it's going to pay you anyways, it's your equity. So you and the tenant are now paying that down, and you can maximize that at 0% as much as possible on cards, right? And then you could go buy 2 more because when that property and your property are both paid off, now you've got income from both properties plus 2 more tenants to pay those down. So that's why I say within, say, 12 to 15 years, you could have at least 4 to 6 properties clear title just by doubling up like that. Now that's just using income that you currently have, your own, like, you know, not increasing your debt load, but only paying what you already were currently paying plus what the tenants were paying to help you. Now, what if you also did a couple extra deals and you helped use that money to pay down the fishing, like to fish down the mortgage on those properties? You can have that happen a lot faster than you're expected to currently be able to do right now. You can have, I paid off 39 rentals in 11 years by doing this, by duplicating it and duplicating it and duplicating it. I was able to pay off 39 mortgages in 11 years. I built over $12 million in equity. And I owned assets that were paying me 39 rentals every single month, clear title. How much income do you guys want per month? You might not need 39. Right? Who knows what you're wanting to do? But if you know what that number is from last week, right? Week 1, if you understand, what do I need to know for sure I can retire on? What is the minimum amount that I'll be comfortable with? Not just surviving, but what is, how do I know I've arrived? What does that look like? Right? Because I didn't do that at first, because I kept going and going and going. But for me, it was like a game too. It was kind of fun. And I thought, why not? Let's just see where it goes, right? I was also building it for my kids and everything else. But the reality is if you are looking for, say, $15,000 a month, right? If you've got properties that are paying you $2,500 to $3,000 a month, and you want 15, well, you're looking at, you know, what, 5 to 6 properties, somewhere in around there, right? If you're only looking for around $10,000 a month or $12,000 a month, then you just need a little bit less, right? Maybe 4. So, you know, what would that do for you? What kind of a retirement would that look like for you? What are you currently making? Right? And not only that, but you own the asset, you have all the equity. So if life ever does happen, you have a savings account that nobody else is leveraging on you. You could actually use it to leverage if you needed to for something else and then pay that down. But you own the asset. You could sell it. You have it. It's yours. That's the big difference. Whereas most people are being taught to leverage, and you don't own anything. And if anything goes wrong and appreciation doesn't happen, appreciation value doesn't happen, if the markets crash, and it's not a matter of if, because they always do over a period of time, there's always crashes, ups and downs in the real estate market, right? Just depends on, you know, does it crash when you need the money or not, or when you owe it and you need to pay it back, right? So you have to think about those things. If you have a joint venture partner, for example, and you borrow their money and their credit to buy a property, most joint venture partnerships on a house are typically around 5 years, some 10 years, but typically around 5 years. If that property hasn't gone up in value enough to pay out, let's just say as an example, sorry, I got the lights in front of me here because it's getting dark at night now. And of course, it always makes me feel like I'm going to sneeze because I'm staring in lights. Anyways, so let's just say for an example, an average house of say around $500,000, give or take, depending on where you live. But let's just say $500,000 house. If you were to put 20% down as an income property to buy a normal, the way most people would buy, not the fishing way, but just the way most people would buy an income property, you'd be putting $100,000 down and getting a $400,000 mortgage. Whether you're borrowing money from your own equity to go buy the property, or you're borrowing money from somebody else, you still have to pay that 100 grand back, right? That's part of the debt. And it's not the same as the fishing formula because we don't borrow that down payment. So it's not got to be paid out by a certain period of time. So let's just say though, if it's borrowed by a joint venture partner, it's a five-year term, you got to pay that $100,000 back plus the interest on that money. But even if you didn't pay the interest on that money, even if you were making $500 a month cash flow, it's going to take 16.67 years just to pay back the $100,000. You haven't made profit. The cash flow is not profit yet. It's servicing the debt that you have to pay back to your partner. And then the mortgage pay down, the profit from any money being paid down on the mortgage and any increase in value in that property has to go towards any kind of expenses that you have, like the interest on the down payment. And for example, on any legal fees to buy it and close, like when you closed, when you bought, and when you close, when you sell, on any maintenance, management fees, any appliances or anything else that need to be done or taken care of, or any vacancies or damage from a tenant, all of that comes out of any mortgage pay down, which isn't going to be a lot in 5 years if you don't know how to, you know, do what I teach you with the mortgages. So 5 years on a mortgage, I mean, think about it. How much money did you actually build in equity on a property in 5 years when you first buy it? $400,000. Let's look at that. $400,000. If you guys have your calculators, put $400,000 into your calculator, push loan amount. Those of you who don't know how to use your calculator yet or don't have one, don't worry about it. You'll have the recording and you'll be able to go back and look at this again later. And we have a whole lesson on calculations. But if we put $400,000 in your calculator and push loan amount, and then let's just go with 2% and then push interest, and the average is around a 25-year and then term, and then push payment. So that's $1,693.80. That doesn't include taxes or anything else, right? But let's just look at what the balance will be in 5 years. So push 5, and then the shift button, the teal button, and then the amortization button. So the balance is 335,081, right? 335,081. If you subtract 400,000 from that to get the difference, it's paid down almost $6,500. Now divide that, subtract all the costs of maintenance or anything else like that, right? Vacancies or anything else, and then divide it in half. That's what your profit is. That's it. After 5 years of working on this property and taking care of this tenant and managing this property over the years, that's all you're going to get is maybe $35,000. Whereas with the fishing formula, you get at least that up front, plus the cash flow, plus back end, and you don't have to worry about having a PITA, pain in the ass, because you've got somebody who actually wants to own that property, so they're on their best behavior. It's a totally different experience, and you didn't have any partners either along the way. And you're not worried about inflation or increase in value or if it's going to happen or not happen, because you've already got the property sold before you start. So this is a totally different way to look at debt and how to pay it off and how to work with money to your best advantage. So let me answer some of your questions that you guys have here. I think Nancy, you were first, and then we'll go with Carter, Blaine, and MJ.
So say a credit card offers you, 0% interest for a year till, do you have to like transfer everything at once, or can you transfer like from a couple of different places? As long as you put it in that time period, then it all.
Yes. So for example, in this scenario, if I have your question correctly. So for example, in this scenario here, they had $8,000 card that was clear, and they could transfer 3,100 from one card over, 3,000 from another card, and still 1,900 from another if they wanted.
Okay.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Carter?
Hi, Candy.
Hi.
My question is forced depreciation. That's pre and post renovation prices.
Okay, so forced depreciation. First of all, forced depreciation is, well, if it's pre, that's stealing equity. Because that's the only way you can buy and make money when you buy is if you buy a property for less than what it's worth. So that means you're taking something that doesn't belong to me, to you. And I don't feel comfortable with that myself personally. But yes, that's what that is. Another thing that's forced depreciation is when you renovate a property to increase its value, that is something that you can do as long as the area that you're doing that in will support the numbers that you still want to get.
Okay, because this was along, when I first started, that was along that joint venture, which I didn't get into. They had said, it's a 5-year process, you get into it for this much. We do renovations, and then the forced depreciation is this much. We refinance to take some money out and stuff like that.
So you're talking about a BRRRR.
Yes.
Yeah, in most cases, BRRRRs don't work. I do know somebody that this is what they do the most of, and even he says his average is 2.38% that he gets out. And I said, like, what's the point? What's the point? You're renovating, and here's the other side of it. Even if you do make a profit out of this, okay? And let's just say you buy a BRRRR, you buy a property. For those of you who don't know, you're buying it. You're gonna buy it below market value because you need the space. You have to have the space, otherwise it doesn't work, to create equity, right? So you do have to start off by stealing somebody's equity. And I call it that because that's just what it is. Might as well call it what it is. So you're going to steal someone's equity because it's not yours, but you're going to take it. And then you're going to have to do work, right, to fix it up, to force the appreciation. So then you're going to get it appraised, and hopefully the appraiser is going to come in and they're going to agree with the fact that your idea of renovations are what they agree has increased the value of that property. So hopefully you're good at renovating and you know what to renovate to make it look like it's worth more. Okay. Now, here's the downside to that. Banks won't refinance a house within the year. Yeah. So a lot of people, they do these BRRRRs and they get sold on the idea of doing them. They get all excited, they go out there and do it. Then the banks go, no. And they're like, what? Because now their money is stuck in it, right? But let's just say they find a creative way to get around it somehow, okay? So now they're at 80% loan to value of a new higher amount. They pull some of their money out. They don't get all of it out. There's an example in the lesson there of how you don't always get it all out, right? But let's just say you get a good portion of that out. So that's great. You've got some out. You've got this property refinanced. Now you've got a higher mortgage that you now have to try and cash flow, which good luck. And now you're going to put a tenant in a brand new renovated property.
Halfway across my room.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you
I
guys
did.
got to
It
mute
was right
yourself.
next to my Xbox.
Somebody's background's really noisy. There we go. So you have to think about that. If you're going to renovate a property to pull out some of your money, not all of it, because it's very rare to get it all out. And then you do all that work. You put a tenant in it who's not going to take care of that property the same way you would. And then what's it going to be worth in a couple of years? You've got a high ratio mortgage on that. If they're living in that property and they're bringing the value of that property down because they're not living in it like they own it, they're living in it like they're renting it. You're gonna have to renovate it again just to sell it to get top dollar to get a profit out of it.
Well, it's good because I never got into that joint venture Burr, so.
Yeah, to me, they just don't make any sense when you run the numbers with the amount of work and the fees involved in refinancing and everything else, and the cost of renovating, the risk as well. If something goes wrong and your timelines eat up your profit and or you find something that you didn't expect to find, which almost always happens in at least one thing during a flip, at least one thing will come up that you didn't expect. Almost every single, I've done over 200 flips, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not just, it's not hearsay. I always share what I actually have experience on. And those things could be one of those things that's a chain reaction. Quite often they are. It's like you find one thing, you fix it, and then it's like, oh, it causes another problem or another one's revealed. And you're like, oh, son of a gun, like you got to keep going. And it can cost you and your time. Exactly. Blaine knows he renovates for a living. That's his job for other people, right? He's the person we hire. If you're smart, because if you're not doing, if you're doing your own, I should say, that all came out wrong. If you're renovating your own projects to try and save money, let me ask you, are you trying to make the money of a real estate investor or the money of a contractor? No offense, Blaine, but I'm pretty sure as a real estate investor, you're going to make more money than you would as a contractor. Okay. So if you want to be paid like a contractor, go ahead and do your own renovation projects. But if you want to be paid like a real estate investor, you need to be looking for the next best deal.
Only when I retire.
There you go, right? Yeah.
For fun, not for money.
Exactly. You have to think about where's your money, because I know so many people that, oh my gosh, like my ex-husband's family on his side of the family, oh my gosh, almost all of the men were in real estate, in some form. Either they worked for another company that was, did, stucco or siding or, poured basements, like the foundations and stuff like this. Like a lot of people in this family did all kinds of different, renovation projects and stuff. And they would almost always all do their own renovations, and they'd be into it for like months and months and months. And I'd stop by and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're renovating like you're moving in. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're never going to get your money out of this. I'm saving because I'm not paying another contractor. I said, well, how much is it costing you to hold this property every single month instead of paying a contractor an hourly wage? What is the holding cost on this property this month? Because it's taking you longer because you have to do it after work. You go to your job during the day, renovate somebody else's property, you come back and do this property in the evening, and it's still taking you twice as long or 3 times as long. It would have been faster just to hire someone and have it over with. A lot of times, people don't really think it through. And a lot of times they're getting bad advice. And so this is why I tend to be that person that's, the Terminator real estate guru bullshit, because I just say it like it is, because you need to hear it. I'm not worrying. I don't know what everybody's doing, right? So I might be stepping on a few of your toes. Some of you might be like, ouch, this hurts. You may have already gone through it and you're like, yeah, I feel that. I have the bruises and more wounds and scars from that. And now you know that you're in the right place because you're going to learn something a little bit different. Okay. I mean, there's so many really great opportunities to make good money in this business, but you have to really think it through and really think about, compared to what you've been told, does that even make sense? Because if it's being told to you with this excitement and it's all, you know, well, you're going to get this and you're going to get that, and you know, like you get to renovate, and it's like the TV shows. Well, TV shows are filled with drama. And I don't know about you, but I always say, do you want drama when it comes to your business? Or do you want to know ahead of time your worst case scenario before you even buy the property? Right? Okay. Well, we're getting a little bit off. We're mostly supposed to be talking about debt tonight. Okay. So Blaine and then MJ, go ahead.
I worked for Renovation Television. You're absolutely right. It's all drama, no renovating. Well, then they do renovate, but that's not what I was asking my question about. With the credit card example and line of credit example that you gave earlier, you'd indicated to at 0%, it would take you 18 months to pay that off.
This particular one, yeah.
Yeah, the last one we just did. But if most balance transfers only allow you for 12 months, would you have to creatively work that into as well?
Well, if you did it for 12 months, right, then it would be paid down 2/3. And then
you just redo it again.
Then they just do a balance transfer of what's left over to like shift it again and do it. Yeah.
I knew there must be a way. It was just
and now
that's what I figured.
Transfer fee too. Usually around 1% to 2% right now. Most places you can get it at 1%, but even if it's at 2%, 2% is not a lot of money because it's a one-time fee. Okay. And then, so that'll be added to it. So, but that's not a big deal. Okay. MJ, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So what if you don't, I'm a little leery about using my credit card, but I'm of the belief to pay it off in full every month, and I have been for a long time, but you know, I come from a past like everyone else that at some point you did run into a bit of a, you know, an issue, which is why I tend to not prefer to use a credit card. That being said, is the fishing formula formulated around just the credit card as a creative way of financing, or are there a multitude of other ways?
Yeah, no,
if you don't want to use your credit card.
We don't use the credit cards to finance the purchase of a property. We just use it to help get rid of debt.
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, you're not going to be borrowing money from a credit card or anywhere else to do the real estate. You literally don't need the money at all. If you want to use it, you can. I'm just showing people how you don't ever need to. I never use the money because I always like to show, you know, to me, it's like a game. It's like every single time it's like, oh, yep, got another one. Oh, yep, got another one. And I just keep proving over and over and over again that it still works, has been working for 28 years in up and down markets. And so, I mean, I can talk circles around anybody that tells me that it's not possible, because I've got tons and tons of examples of deals that I've done that show that it is, plus my clients and stuff. So yeah, you're going to learn how to buy the property without needing a dime. Okay. Now, like I said, if you want to, or if it's convenient to use it temporarily to secure a property until it comes back into your pocket in short term, that's totally up to you. Sometimes people will do that just to make it easier and go faster and more fluid. They do more deals that way. But if you don't have that at the front end, you don't have to do it right away, right? So we get into next week, week 3 is all about the most common strategies and the pros and cons to those, to answer the question in the chat there that I saw pop up. And then week 4 is all about the fishing formula, how it works, why I created it, and so forth. And then we get into all the different steps broken down onto what to do and how to do it, right to the marketing of it. Okay. So we'll go through all of that.
Can I ask a secondary question?
Yeah.
So what about if you, what were we gonna ask? Oh, where the banks, like if you've got savings in the bank and now based on what you said, a person wants to get it the heck out of the bank. What would you recommend as far as an investment?
I don't. I never ever recommend investments. I won't do that because it's not what I do. The only thing that because I show you how to get into real estate without needing money. If you want to put money into real estate, you can. It's totally up to you, but I don't recommend other investments. I just show you how to get into real estate without needing money and to build net worth and income and a retirement picture out of that. And I show you how to get rid of debt if you're in debt. But what you do with any of your surplus is completely on you to decide what you want to do with that. If you have debts that you want to pay down and you want to build equity in something, you could put it in the real estate that you're acquiring to pay it down and save yourself the interest on that if you don't have any other debts. That's what I've done, and that's what people, other people in the program have done. But some people are like, yeah, no, every now and then, like I've done the same thing. I've bought toys, you know, I like my toys. I like nice things. You know, I like holidays. I like to do stuff like that. So I believe in if I'm working really hard and I'm doing really well, I'm not waiting till someday. Again, there's that intangible thing to be able to enjoy what I've got, right? I know what it's like to be diagnosed with terminal cancer. I know how short life can be. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. Every single morning I wake up, the first thing that comes out of my mouth is, thank you, God. Thank you for this day. Thank you for blessing me with another day with my family and another day with my clients and another day in this world to do something good for somebody. And that's the first thing that comes out of my mouth. I do that, and then I do my squishies and I ams, and I actually do the champagne squishy dance when I do the blessing. But that's just what that's for me. I like to enjoy myself and have fun and do some things, but it's always measurable, right? But if I'm going to buy, for example, a vehicle, I'm the kind of person that will pay cash because I don't believe in paying interest if I don't have to. I would rather just, if I'm going to pay it, I might as well pay the least amount that I'm going to pay it because I'm going to pay for it anyways, right? And it's fun when you get to the point where you can just go pay cash for something. And I just don't believe in paying interest if I don't have to. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, I mean, you can look into all kinds of different things, but there's risk in everything. Absolutely everything. The one thing that's nice about real estate though, is when you own it, you know, the markets can go up and down, but over a period of time, they go up and down in an upward trend. So just don't sell when it's going down. And if you've got them structured properly, as you'll learn throughout the program, you'll know what to buy and when, you know, what to buy and what not to buy, and then when to sell according to the deal that you have with people. Because for example, I never owned properties for more than about 10 to 15 years because I don't want the renovations. So I want it sold before that, so I never have to renovate it. And we'll talk about what that looks like and also how to sell it before you've bought it so that you know what the profit's going to be before you even start. Okay. Cool. All right. Does anybody have any more questions about the debt portion of things? Oh, Keith has his hand up. Keith, you're muted. Come on, you know how this works.
Well, I muted myself, I thought. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Rookie, knucklehead.
Yeah, knucklehead.
Hey, I got with at the beginning of tonight, you brought up something really interesting about stealing people's debt in the foreclosure situation.
Their equity, yeah.
Yeah, their equity. Is it appropriate to bring up how to use the fishing formula in a declining market and when the prices are being adjusted without stealing people's equity? Because I don't want to overpay for a property that we buy, right? Or I buy.
Okay, so give me a scenario.
Okay, so something $1.1 million home increased to 1.5 in this craziness. Now the market will correct, and there'll be a decline in pricing. Now that
so
the prices
overinflated by 400, market corrects. Okay.
Yeah. So instead of as an investor, I don't want to overpay the inflated prices when the market's coming back down.
Right, but here's the
And
thing is,
at the
don't-
same time, I don't want to steal people's equity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point. So, for example, I'm assuming you're looking at a deal worth those numbers. So what I would say is, if you're, first thing I'm gonna look at is what is the trend in that neighborhood, okay? Are the property values being overinflated? Okay, now there are some companies out there, and I'm not gonna get into, well, the red pill side of things, let's go there because I do. The red pill side of things, we're just going to do the wake up call here. There literally are certain organizations right now that are overbidding on properties and paying too much for them so they can buy them up and then they can sell them at a high price point and own, they can carry financing at a high price point so that when the market corrects, people are overfinanced, they can call the loans due, okay? They're controlling and manipulating the market is what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So if you notice that a neighborhood, an area like Toronto, for example, or Vancouver, some
Exactly.
places in even Alberta was doing it for a little while, but it's settled down. But there's a lot of places that where they're getting like over asking price, like $100,000 over asking price. Okay, if that's happening, those property values are being overinflated. You're not getting equity at all. You're paying for something. You're paying too much for something. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're making an emotional purchase. Don't do it. The one thing that's really cool about the fishing formula and about how we do this, we can buy anywhere in Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand, UK, whatever. Like if you want to buy anything on the other side of the country, even if you want to, I typically stay within Canada now. I mean, I've got US stuff as well, but, and I've bought stuff in the Dominican also as well, myself personally, but staying within Canada is my favorite. It just makes it easier, but I can buy anything on the other side of the country if I want to. I can buy where it makes sense to buy because I don't have to see the property. I haven't seen over half the properties I've ever bought. You don't need to. That's an emotional crutch that you think you need to do that. And you will learn how to do that and how to get over the fact that you don't need to, if you think you need to see it, you get over that. I'll show you. So, but here's the thing. So let's just say the area that you're looking at is overinflated. You know that, then I personally wouldn't buy there. I would be buying somewhere else.
So
Or
if I have, so the concern is I have a property that the person's in pre-foreclosure.
right.
I know they overpaid $100,000 because they got caught up
Right.
and the
So what I
bubble
would do-
burst. Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just finish what my thought is, because I know where you're going with that. So, because
Okay,
I know
thanks.
you've got a specific property in mind. So what I would say, if that's the case and you're trying to help somebody in pre-foreclosure, and you can show them that here's where the property price points jumped, and this is where you bought in and this is where they went, but here's what it's actually worth. So if you look at an average of all the neighborhoods or close cities buy in something similar, but you also look historically over the last couple of years, the percentage of what it's been increasing, and then you see the anomaly, you show them the anomaly, and then you still go with what is the actual value. So this still comes down to what is the true value of that property? Not what are they asking because of an inflated market, but what is the true value? Okay, we always go based on the true value. When we buy at the lower end of the true value, and we sell at the higher end of the true value, not an inflated value, because we're not ripping anybody off on either end. And then that way you can show them, look, and you can show them how you come up with those numbers. And it's realistic and reasonable. Any person that actually understands that will see that you're trying to help them without being taken advantage of yourself. So now if they've got themselves caught up in something where they paid too much and it's underwater, I still wouldn't take over a mortgage that's worth more than the value of the property. I wouldn't do that, even to try and help somebody, because it's putting you in a bad spot. I'm not willing to lose money to help somebody, but I am willing to make money and help them not lose money, if that makes sense, because I still have to sell the property. So I have to have the ability to have a spread. But the nice thing about a house that's worth, in the millions, if it's worth 1.1 million, then you know that you can get a spread of at least $150,000.
Yeah.
Right. that is comparable. So then I would be looking at them and saying, okay, so here's what the actual true value of this property is based on a historic CMA of the area. And here's the anomaly. This anomaly, this spike is not true value. It's an inflated value. It's not a true value. It's not something that's going to sustain itself. So you can show them that. And then I would buy at fair market value if they agree with the assessment. If they don't, they don't. And quite often people that are in foreclosure, they're going to try and do everything they can. And I would just keep that door open and say, if you don't get what you wanted, don't wait too long, because if you wait too long, I can't help you. It'll come out, it'll be taken out of your hands. You'll have no choice, but you will lose your equity and your credit. So don't go too long. So for example, if they've gone to the court, you know, they've received a statement of claim, which is the first step of the foreclosure. And then they go to the courthouses if they get to that point where they haven't made things up by that point. Depending on how much equity they have, they're going to be given 1 to 6 months typically to sell that property on their own. If they can't sell it within, say they're given 6 months, if they haven't sold it within 4, you need time to put somebody in it and then to buy it from them. That could be pushing it. So you want to make sure that you've got the timeline in there and let them know what that timeline is. Say, typically I like 6 months to find a property for somebody. But if you've got buyers already and then this property comes up, then great, because then you could show it right away, which is why I like my buyers first, or at least a lineup of buyers that are possible. Now, if you don't and you have the property first, then you've got to decide, do you want to risk holding costs? Now you can, but I teach you how to do it so you never have to. Doesn't mean you can't if it's a really good deal and it makes sense to do it. But I typically don't like holding costs myself. So, and in a pre-foreclosure, you're going to have to make up the arrears. So you're going to be out of pocket somewhere. So it needs to come from your buyer, not from your pocket, unless you've got the ability to do that. And you know you're going to make a really good profit in the end. And you've got the funds to do it, to tie it up till you find somebody. But then you got to think of those costs to hold it till you find somebody. And does it still make sense?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I'm just preparing myself for the hard conversation with somebody that's going to lose all their down payment because they overpaid. And to tell them and show them that it's gone. I can't buy your mistake.
That I was just going to say that you can't put yourself at risk because they made a mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really important, guys, because it's so, when you work with people that are in pre-foreclosure, your heart's going to break. Okay. And I'm a bleeding heart personality. I'm the kind of person that will bend over backwards to try and help somebody. I mean, my mom said as a kid, I used to bring home every stray animal and then she'd make me walk them around the neighborhood till people go, oh, that's my dog. You know, I would just like, I would take everything home, but even kids, you know, I would bring kids home and I would feed them, or I would, you know, I spent an entire summer teaching this Spanish family, their son English before we go to school. So he would feel confident. And this is just what I do. And I'm sure many of you are like that, where you just, if you could, you would just do everything to help everybody, right? But you can't always. They have to be part of the solution, and it empowers them and it makes them feel like they've helped themselves. Okay. Part of it is not making them feel like a victim or putting them in that victim position, showing them how, yes, you've made a mistake and it's maybe going to sting a little bit, but it could sting way worse. It could be devastating or it can sting. Right? I'm going to show you how to save your credit, and I'm going to show you how to save your equity based on what it's really worth. But from there forward, I'm not giving you something that's not yours, because that inflated value is probably, you know, in a year from now, it might not even be there anyway.
Right.
It could be lower if the market totally goes down, right?
Yeah.
So, or if it corrects itself.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks. Yep.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Did you guys learn something new tonight? Awesome.
You bet.
Right on. Good, good. Does anybody have any questions before we go? No?
No, Blaine.
Oh, Blaine, he has his thumb up. He's doing a thumb up.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Thanks for checking though.
Thank you. though.
Okay, everyone. Well, what we'll do is we'll meet back here on Wednesday night and then again Thursday night, both the same times. Wednesday night is Q&A Wednesday. So for those of you who sent me in questions, I do have them and we will cover them on Wednesday. And there was one that was, let's see here. Yeah, I think it was, I'm not sure, but I think it might have been you, Eric, that was wondering if I had seen your email, and that's why I want to meet with you tomorrow.
Very good, thank you.
I did see it, but I didn't want to go over your scenario in front of everybody.
That's totally fine, yeah.
Okay, and then if you decide that you want that, that's okay, we can go from there. So yeah, we'll meet tomorrow. And I've got Lucas's question for Wednesday as well. I've got one from Tim about the land transfer tax. So if you guys have any other questions that you want answered, Q&A Wednesday, send your questions to Candy, CANDI @foundationsforsuccess.com. And one other thing, I'm just going to say, don't send your questions to Heath and Kelly if they're the ones that brought you in, okay? Because they're students. They just happen to love the program so much. And once they had gone through it a couple of times, they're like, I love this so much. And they've had good results themselves that they wanted to start, being the ones that help share with other people that, hey, yes, I've been through this. I love this. So they wanted to be part of the team. So they had to qualify, doing certain things, but they're not coaches. So if you have questions, please just send them to me instead of asking them, so that it's not on their plate, because they can't answer all of your questions. They might be able to answer the odd one here and there. But there is one that comes up an awful lot is, when do I get my next lesson? The lessons are automatically dripped out every 7 days. Okay. I can't change it, because if I change it, then it has to start over and you'll be back at week 1. So it's just an automated system that I can't go in and interrupt, or it resets back to week 1. And then you're like, oh, that didn't work. Okay. Just so you're aware how that works. So don't worry about your timing of whether or not you're on the same schedule as me with these classes. It doesn't matter, because your worst case scenario is at least 18 months. Most of you though have got the lifetime membership. So you're in here for as long as I'm doing business. All right. So there's no pressure. You're going to constantly get the reminders. It's always good to go through at least twice anyways. So you'll gain lots and lots of information. So don't worry about catching up or getting behind or anything. It's all on your schedule. Okay, I've designed it that way because I know everybody learns at a different pace. Alrighty, let's see here.
Carter's got a question.
Carter has a question. Okay, Carter. go
Candy,
ahead.
your Friday night gig, is that start the same time as our normal stuff?
So the Friday night is the only one that's going to be a half an hour earlier, just because people on the East Coast, I don't want it to be so late. They're going to be starting at 9 for my 5, because I'm on the far west, they're on the far east. I just wanted to try and have something slightly earlier for you. And or if anybody invites anybody from the East Coast. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome, MJ. She's
It's
like
11:30 here.
Oh dear. Okay. Yeah, I know it's late. 11:30 for you.
It's all good, but yeah,
Okay.
I'm yawning.
I know. I bet you are. I bet you are. Okay, everybody. We'll see you on Wednesday. Take care. I'm glad you guys learned something new tonight. Bye for
Very good,
now.
thanks.
Thanks, Candy.
Thank you.
Good night,
Have a good
everyone.
day.
Guys, have a good
Hey,
night.
folks.
Okay,
Thanks, Candy.
bye, everyone.
Thanks, Candy.
Oh, you're welcome, sweetheart. Bye-bye.